second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello and welcome to episode 35 of PvA Radio. I am one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellokline. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Allergies are hitting me a little bit, but I'm doing well.
Yeah, me too, man. We've had the windows down in the house, and like my next door neighbor mowed today. And over the years, I've developed a terrible grass allergy, and so I was feeling it a little this afternoon. Also joining us, in all the chaos, I didn't think of a nickname for you this week, Larry Hunt.
Noted grass enthusiast.
Yes, I love grass, although I too am allergic.
I didn't have allergies until I went to Tennessee. Like, I never dealt with allergy stuff. Then I moved to East Tennessee for 4 years of school, and it's like the number one place on the east of the Mississippi for allergies, like the highest allergens. And
so,
kinds of pollen.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It kills me now this time of year.
My biggest allergy is dogwood trees, and that's why this time of year is so bad for me. They bloom. It's awful. And Tennessee was the worst because years ago, a journalist wrote about how Tennessee was one of the ugliest cities in America. And so they started this initiative to make Knoxville.
Oh, I was about to say.
Sorry. Yeah. And so they started this initiative to make Knoxville beautiful, and they've done a great job. But one of their solutions was to plant dogwood trees literally everywhere. Oh. The whole city is dogwood trees. So I would be on the verge of death every spring when we lived there.
Yeah, it's also the state tree of Virginia, so they're everywhere here too.
Can't escape, no escape.
This is PvA Radio. We get together every week to talk about all things horticulture. Now, we get together every week over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio, and each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table. And then we have an in-depth discussion about it. It's like a collaborative audio feature article, a CAFA, if you will. And Larry, what do we tell people to do with that?
Tattoo it to your forehead.
That is correct. Going real hard there. If you can't catch us live over here, you can also find us on youtube.com/PvA Radio. I was explaining to Cody how I wasn't smart, and now I am smart, and now you can find us at youtube.com/PvA Radio. It makes it a whole lot simpler. So, and then you can find us on podcast services everywhere. Wherever you're listening to us, subscribe, leave us a comment, a like, a review. If you leave us a review, we'll read it out on the podcast as well. So, all right, guys, let's jump right into it. I'm feeling like I don't want to waste time. We're a little late today. Yes, Larry.
Yes.
Oh, you seem to want to derail that, so I was going to give you the floor.
I wasn't.
Oh, okay. All right, fantastic.
For the first time ever.
Also, my mic is really loud. I apologize. All right, well, let's start this week like we get every week, started with what have you been playing? Cody, we're going to start with you. What have you been playing?
A lot more of The Division 2. Still really enjoying it. And then I dove into Borderlands 2 after talking about Borderlands last week. I didn't play it a lot, but I played it a little bit. It's just a really fun game. I am playing on PC, so my Mac is straining to run this game, but I'm still enjoying it.
So did you get the free upgrade to? They did the 4K update on the Borderlands 2 on PC. So are you playing on that? Obviously probably not in 4K, but
no, I'm not playing in 4K. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not really sure. I'm not a PC dude. I don't know what's going on. I press play on Steam and then I play it.
All right, fair enough.
This is how I game.
He uses his PC like it's a console. It's just, whatever happens.
Yeah, it's rolling the dice.
All right, awesome. Anything else?
No, that's it. I haven't been playing Sekiro. I want to pronounce it correctly this week.
Yeah. We didn't mention that. So we all had the chance for the first time ever to meet one another in person on Saturday. Well, I've met Larry in person quite a few times, all right, at least 10. And but we've known Cody now for years, and this was the first time we had a chance to meet up in person because you live relatively close to us, closer to us than you did when you were in Boston.
Definitely, yeah, much closer.
It's pretty cool. A little risky. I didn't know if Cody was going to kidnap me. I didn't know if I was going to kidnap Cody, but it all worked out all right.
Yeah, it did work out.
He knew he wanted to. I was talking him out of it on the way up there. I was like, "Now, Larry, when we get there, you're going to want to shove him in the trunk. I'm not going to let you do that."
I was describing to my coworker what I was going to do this weekend. I'm like, I met these two random Southern gentlemen on the internet, and I'm going to meet them for the first time. I'm driving 2.5 hours to Charlottesville to hang out with these two Southern men.
Dude, they had an obituary pre-written for you like a celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome, though. We're definitely going to have to do that again. We're starting to plan out a little charity stream that we have in the works, and details will come together for that soon, hopefully, and we'll be able to pass those along to you guys. But all right, Larry. He's taking a sip out of his psych mug. So Larry texted me right before the podcast, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm going to be drinking out of my psych mug if you want to join me," because he bought me the same psych mug for some occasion back in the day.
And last time I used my psych mug on the show, you were like, "I'd have used mine if you'd let me know." So you asked for it.
Now, Larry, when I say let me know, I don't mean let me know 2 minutes before we're about to hop on and I'm going to get shit set up for us.
It was 8:45. That was 5 minutes before we were about to hop on.
Oh, I think I had already opened up the video chat on Discord. So, look, I'm obnoxiously early. You should know this about me by now.
When he came to pick us up, he was super early, and I don't know if I should say this on the internet, but I'm going to. Our landlord has developed this habit of showing up unannounced, and so we've developed this habit of blatantly ignoring him when he does, not being quiet or anything, just not answering the door. And so when Luke showed up early, we thought he was the landlord because a branch went through our carport, and so we just ignored him knocking at our door.
So let me tell this story from my end, all right? So I'm at his house. I get there obnoxiously early, and I just always if I'm super early, I'll just sit out in my car till I'm supposed to be up there. So I wait. It was 10:42. I realized I wasn't supposed to be there till 10:45, but I walk up to the door and I rap at the door, and I hear Larry's daughter and his wife just talking to each other right outside the door, and so I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're getting something in order in the house, making sure stuff's ready, and so I stand there for a few minutes and knock on the door again. Same thing. I hear his daughter and his wife just chatting on the other side of the door. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I just text Larry. I was like, all right, man, I'm going to go just sit out in the car, I guess, and wait on you. So I walk all the way back out to the road, get in my car, and Jess opens up the door and is waving me in and gives me this whole spiel. And I was like, did Larry not tell you that I was coming over? Is this all a shock to you?
Oh, hey, honey, I'm going to be gone for a couple hours.
Oh, man. So, anyway, Larry, what I was going to ask you, about 12, 15 minutes ago, what have you been playing, my friend?
So I haven't played The Division this week, which is kind of sad. Played some Overwatch. It had been a while. When Luke asked me to play Overwatch, I was not excited about that. And then once I got into it, I was like, I'm glad I did this. Overwatch and I, we spent some time apart, and it was good for us. It was good for our relationship. I've been playing a lot of Apex, still loving that game. And this week, Bethesda actually let me into Elder Scrolls Blades, so I got to play it. And, it's a mobile game, and I don't have real high expectations for it, but gameplay-wise, it's a really fun game. It's a dungeon crawler, and the controls for combat are pretty unique. Unfortunately, a lot of it relies on loot, and the way you get that loot is by finding chests, and the way you open those chests is classic mobile. Wooden chests open in 5 seconds, silver chests open in 3 hours, and gold chests open in 5 hours. And so I wound up with all these chests, and I can either buy some of their in-game currency to unlock them more quickly, or I just wind up locked up, and so I will not be continuing to play this game. I guess I should have expected this, but I did not expect this. Kind of sad.
So the game itself is free, right?
Yeah. But I'd rather pay for the game and be able to play it.
I think that's a ton of people like our age. I think that's the general consensus among people our age with mobile games. It's like, just let me pay $5.99 for the damn thing and be on my way. And so, but I guess there's somebody who's out there paying this, or else, mobile games would choose a different model, and they're probably paying much more than $5.99.
Yeah,
true.
So, let's see. I've been playing Smash, trying to get good at that game. Still played in the LPI, which is streamer I watch his weekly Smash tournament. Got my ass handed to me in both matches, but I played. I don't know if there was anything special about the first person. I mean, look, we're all special, but I don't know if there was anything particularly special about the first person that I played. But the second person I played was the previous week's champion, so I didn't expect to do that well. I did take a stock off of him in one match that I felt really good about, but I feel like I'm improving even more. I played like 2 hours with Ben last night, just in an arena, fighting him, and he's pretty good at that game. So, and we were kind of trading back and forth on who got wins. Not going to be able to play in it this week. It's the Invitational, and I did not meet the threshold for points. And then, yeah, we got back into Overwatch. I've been playing Overwatch a little more than Larry has on PC, but hopped on Xbox with him, and I thought we had a pretty good time. I got a little tilted. I was streaming, so I may have gotten more tilted than I normally would have gotten, but I still got pretty tilted. Yeah, Cody's played with me when I'm not streaming. He knows.
I get less tilted when you're streaming because I don't want there to be evidence.
You shouldn't. You
and
should
no one laugh because it's not a joke.
You should release your inhibitions. Feel the rain on your skin. All right.
Rain on you.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's. I wanted to mention a follow up here, and I forgot to pull the story in. So I was talking with Larry on the phone about this, but a couple weeks ago we talked about the story where PlayStation was removing retail codes for digital codes for games from retailers, like brick and mortar retailers, and why that may be so. And I think I've come to the bottom of it. Cody, did you see a story last week about how PlayStation is about to announce a change in their refund policies?
I did not see this.
So Sony is about to, there's rumors that they're about to announce that they're going to change their refund policy to where if you bought something and have not downloaded it yet, you can still get a refund for the game within 14 days of purchase. So like if you bought Anthem and you didn't install it, but you started reading a bunch of stories about how it was bricking people's PlayStations, you could turn your code in and say, give me my $60 back. But it doesn't come back to you in cash. It just gets applied right back to your PlayStation wallet.
Yeah.
And so if those rumors are true, it helps make a lot of sense. And I think there's still room for speculation about PlayStation's motives, but I think the motive's clear. So when you go to GameStop and you buy anything digital, whether that's DLC, a game code, or even currency, those things are completely non-refundable. Like, you cannot get your money back for it. So if you go in and you want to buy Xbox One currency and the cashier accidentally rings you up for PS4 and you come back and realize they gave you the wrong thing, you're kind of SOL. And when you're ringing up, they make you confirm your purchase on the screen. Like, you get a readout of what you're actually buying because of that. So I imagine Sony pulled those codes because people would expect that they could go back to GameStop and get a refund within that same policy, and those policies don't overlap between the retailer and what PlayStation's actually doing on their client side. And also probably to do with some scam stuff where you could buy those codes via trade-in currency, and then come back, get the refund, and then it gets applied back to your wallet as PlayStation currency. So just wanted to do a quick follow-up there. We did a lot of kind of wild speculation, and I think a lot of it still reigns true and will ultimately pan out, but I think that actually is probably more likely the immediate reason for the change.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, let's get into our topics here, Larry. Kick us off. What do you got for us?
All right. So, first off, there's something that I failed to mention in my "What have you been playing?" And don't worry, it connects here. I watched a documentary on Netflix called "Playing Hard," and it's about the development of For Honor. And just so you guys know, that's going to be my topic next week. So there's your homework. Go home and
Cool.
I mean, you are home, but step into the next room.
It's like a film club.
Don't tell me where I'm at.
Yeah. And viewers, if you want to be able to weigh in next week on that, go ahead and give it a watch. But I've already seen it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Very often we talk about the development side of things, and we always have the disclaimer. Now, we've never developed a game, and this game, this documentary gave you a really good look behind the curtain. But that's not my topic this week. This week, my topic is that Borderlands 2 is the first game to keep in its user reviews. So a lot of people are upset that Borderlands 3 is going to be on the Epic Games Store. And they did what any reasonable person who's upset by that news, they went and left a negative review on Borderlands 2 on Steam. And so with this sudden tanking of reviews, Steam has set up a system where they've kind of flagged from August. Sorry, what? It's not August. What month is this? April 3rd to April 6th. There were a lot of negative reviews in news. And so I just wanted to talk about the whole review bombing thing here for a minute, because this has just become a problem across the board. Anywhere where users, customers, viewers are able to review something, this is just like a standard thing that happens now. People show up and just they hate a thing without any good reason and just try to tank the score of that thing. We've seen it affecting movies, TV shows, and of course video games. So with this being a problem in every public review space for a while now, has this affected the way that you consider user reviews, or do you still find some value in those?
So before we hop into that, sorry, Larry, not to take over your topic here.
It's all good.
Can we stop for a second and kind of talk about the root cause of this particular instance, and it being about, the exclusivity of Borderlands on Steam? I mean, on the Epic Store, and how it's not coming to Steam until April next year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right.
And just the complete and utter vitriolic response that the community has had to this news, like, I'm trying to make sense of it, right? And maybe you guys can enlighten me to an extent here. But the Epic Game Store, while in its infancy and pretty underdeveloped, is still a free platform to be able to download and play games from, correct? And you can do that from any computer that you would otherwise be able to get Steam on, right? Am I wrong?
That seems to be the case, Lucas.
Okay.
But will you get trophies?
There are Steam achievements, aren't there?
Yes. But no one really cares about them.
Okay. I didn't know if I'm new to the PC world. I didn't know if there was a big community around them, like on PlayStation and
Speak
Xbox.
for yourself. The Steam achievements are the entire reason I left a negative review on Borderlands. I didn't do that, for the record. I did not do that.
Like, why do you think people are so upset about this?
It's change.
Oh, God forbid.
I know. I really do think that's the root cause. I mean, think about it logically for 1 second, and yeah, it makes no sense. But if you're a Steam diehard and everything you play is on Steam, everything your friends play is on Steam, it's just another barrier. It's like, it is a barrier, not a significant barrier to you being able to play the game. within the comfort of a system you already have and already kind of understand. And there's also we talked about this when we were in person, kind of there's other narratives surrounding the Epic Games Store that have kind of weighed heavily on why people have responded to it so negatively. But I think, at least from what I've seen, it's like a lot of people not willing to accept a new player in the space, and kind of there's a combative relationship created by people and sort of by the companies themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's as close as you're going to get to a rationale to this. It just people dislike change because it just doesn't make sense. We talked about it a little bit last week, and I was like, really? We're upset by this? So
correct me if I'm wrong. When this game comes to Steam, if I bought it on the Epic Store, I'll still be able to play with people who are on Steam, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Like, multiplayer is not exclusive to what platform you're on, right?
I would assume it's all the same servers, right?
Yeah.
It's just funny. Like, I mean, I know people complain about Uplay and EA Origin. You don't hear as much complaints about like Battle.net and stuff like that, or League's exclusive client. I think it is just a trickle down hate for Fortnite and what Epic has kind of done to the games industry as of late. But I just don't see how you can look at, oh man, the makers of the game and the publishers of the game get a significant advantage in revenue share on this platform. I'm sure they got some sort of kickback on top of that from Epic as well. And as I always go back to with like these exclusivity talks, is like, you don't know what about this game would not have been made possible had a deal like this not been struck, right? Like, a lot of times exclusivity is gone into from the creator side of things because it gives an injection of cash that's needed to get something to the finish line. And so, I don't know, like, I get being mad about something like being Walmart exclusive, or, Xbox One came and bought the rights to Tomb Raider or whatever, and that requires me to go buy a whole new box. But for something that's like, I'm going to have to download a 500 megabyte, digital storefront in order to download it, like, I don't know. That's
I also
just for
think
the words.
I think the whole situation around Metro also left a bad taste in a lot of Steam users' mouths as well. I would assume that that's playing a part in it as well.
Are we really that brand loyal? To like,
I think so.
I think we are, but it's also the fact that like people had pre-ordered Metro on Steam and then they heard it was coming exclusively to Epic, and I can understand why you'd be upset about that. I can understand why, as Valve, you'd be upset about that. But I think, I also think this is sort of ridiculous. There's a lot of also extreme, fringe thoughts that are becoming a part of this conversation that I'm not super comfortable about either.
There also was not a lot of thought into how this could backfire, right? Like 5 years from now, I'm blanking. Who makes Borderlands? Gearbox. Yeah. 5 years from now, Gearbox is getting ready to make their next game. They look at how it performed on Steam, how their games have performed on Steam, how they've performed on Epic, and they're like, wow, our average reviews are pretty low on Steam. We should probably emphasize the Epic Games Store, like, way to shoot your foot off.
Yeah, I also don't see how anybody thinks that Gearbox is looking at it and they're saying, oh man, they're review bombing us over there on Steam. This is definitely a fan base we want to cater to.
Yeah, exactly.
It just seems counterproductive. Anyway, I'm sorry, Larry. I commandeered your topic. Your original question,
yeah, dude, it's all good,
was how do these review bombs impact how we view like user scores, right?
Yeah. Do you still consider them at all, or has this changed things for you?
I think we answered the question.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I never really considered them to begin with, and like, especially with something like this where you're not even fucking reviewing the game. That, like, look, Borderlands 2's place in like the critical conversation in the world of video games is pretty well set at this point. And nobody's going to go looking back at these Borderlands 2 reviews and be like, oh man, they must have pushed a weird update or something that like broke this game.
They deleted the cell shading.
I think really the only space that I'm into like reading reviews on is when I'm buying like a physical product, and like and then I'm like on Amazon and I'm reading verified purchasers, right? Which I think is how you combat stuff like this. Like, and these are probably, I think Steam may have something where you have to have so much playtime in order to leave a review, or it somehow like marks whether or not you've played X amount of the game. But I think having like, but yeah, for me, I read user reviews on products. I don't read them on video games and movies, because all that shit's just subjective.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I've actually gotten to the point, and this might peg me as pretentious, but I've gotten to the point where if the discrepancy between a critic score and a user score is great enough, I will go to see the movie. I will make sure to go see that movie, because like if the critic score is at like 90% and the users, I'm referencing a very specific film here, and the user score is abysmal, it's usually a good indication of why that user score might be the way it is. I'm talking about The Last Jedi. And so I didn't really put much stuff. I like to see when there is a discrepancy why that might be, whether the audience just isn't latching on to something, because that is a good indication of kind of how a movie might perform at the box office or something like that. But as of late, it has been less of an indication of that and more of an indication of some severe toxicity and vitriol manifesting itself in reviews.
So when I was younger, I put a lot of stock into when I went to buy a game, I'd look at user reviews. But over time, this has affected. Like, I absolutely do. A long time ago, I stopped considering the number score altogether. And what I do now is I'll go through and I'll read like specific complaints, specific praises of the game or the product or the movie. And very often you can suss out the person's motivations in leaving the review just from that. So, I mean, it's changed it for me, and really it has gotten to where I basically, it doesn't matter at all to me. But if I'm just completely up in the air on something, I'll look and see if there are like specific complaints that are getting reiterated by a lot of people. But yeah, the reviews themselves don't hold a lot of value to me anymore. What do you think about Steam's effort to address this? Was this good? Is there anything they could do better? I guess I'm tying all of my last three questions together here because I think they're going to run into each other. So what do you think about what Steam did here, flagging it as, I forget their exact wording, but more or less they flagged it as this has been review bombed. Could they have done something better? And can customer reviews be done well at all? Or is that just something that's always going to be a dumpster fire?
So you remember when the Switch put out reviews for like, I think it was like 2 weeks on their platform, and they were like, nah, we're good. and now the platform doesn't have them anymore. Like, I don't know. I think this response is perfectly fine, and I give Steam a lot of shit for a lot of decisions that they make, but this isn't one of them. Like, you can't help what your fan base, what your users do, and how they abuse the platform. And outside of just completely shutting down reviews, I imagine most people have at least an hour of gameplay on Borderlands. You know, there's a lot of people who've played that game, and so I imagine a lot of the people that left these reviews were people who did have it purchased and have played the game, because they're the people that are most upset about the Borderlands 3 stuff. So there's really no like, you know, prerequisite that they could have put on reviewing that would have really stopped this influx, because it just wouldn't have filtered out too many people. So just being aware of how people are using the platform and seeing that there's some suspicious activity that's going on here, like and we're going to mark that manually, I think is a really smart thing. I mean, very rarely do you see these movements where there isn't exterior coverage coming about it. You know, Kotaku writing an article or Polygon writing an article about a game getting review bombed. Like, So I think just having like a manual review process and being able to put that stamp on it is a perfectly fair way of addressing it.
Okay.
It's kind of difficult because I do think this method certainly addresses like widespread review bombing and like kind of the massive influx of bad reviews they've gotten recently. I don't know how much it would address like individuals kind of doing this stuff, but at that point you have moderators whose job it is to kind of address that. I will say in the article you linked to Polygon, I find some of their past methods questionable in terms of how effective they would be. Past methods include this is from the Polygon article by Owen Good. Past methods included graphs highlighting quote-unquote temporary distortions in the feedback cycle and a means of rating whether someone's review was helpful, unhelpful, or funny. I mean, both of those are varying degrees of absurd. Like, I don't like the on a scale of helpful to funny. I don't even know if that is a scale.
And the funny just tends to encourage people to leave reviews to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's more encouraging trolling behavior than anything else. And I don't know how many people who look at like the reviews on Steam or on PlayStation Store are going to look at a graph and like be willing to kind of dive into the analytics on that level. So I don't know. I think this method is as kind of good as they could have done in a circumstance where user reviews are already part of their ecosystem, and it's kind of difficult to kind of address on an individual basis at this point.
Yeah, I also kind of think, sorry, Larry. There's some. I think about like Google local reviews. So part of what I do for a living is like reputation management for clients that I work for, like review monitoring and I have not personally had clients who have been quote unquote review bombs, but there are clients at my agency who have had some bad press coverage and, some reviews that came through from people who weren't really familiar with the institution, more so just the story. But the way that Google kind of handles it is they give different weights to different scores. And so you'll notice like when you search on Google for like a restaurant or something, you'll see reviews from local guides. That is like an actually pretty important distinction for Google, that they kind of handpick these people who leave really in-depth content on the reviews, and they give fair scores. Like they're not just, oh, everything's a 2 and we're just going to talk a lot of crap about this place, or hey, everything's a 5 and we're going to just leave a 1-sentence thing. And it's more than just like Google's algorithm checking these people. Like Google trusts these people to be part of like beta testing program for new local guide features that they're about to introduce, things like that. And so like you can have 5-star review from a local guide and then a bunch of 1-star reviews from people who don't leave any comments at all, and like that 5-star review is going to far outweigh all of those 1-star reviews. And I think a method like that would be incredibly helpful on a storefront of like, oh, this is somebody who is a verified purchaser, who has X amount of hours in the game, who has left X amount of reviews, and they've left 2s, they've left 5s, but they always leave great feedback and good content, and we're going to mark this person as somebody to trust their feedback on. Not necessarily critically, but just they're thoughtful and they put time and effort into it.
I like that you brought that up, because in my mind, like I've been coming at it from the negative angle, right? Like, how do you stop the bad reviewers? But I like that positive angle of just empower the ones that are doing it well. Mm-hmm. Make that something to aspire to. Yeah.
And then you can have like 3 distinctions, right? You can have like the critic score, the user score, and then you can have like that middle tier, that local guide, whatever it would be called, score for people who have that mark.
Mm-hmm. My wife just attained local guide status a few hours ago, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is she a review leaver?
Like, what? I guess so. I didn't know this.
I imagine Chatham doesn't have a lot of people vying for that position. So
You're not wrong. Yeah. So as far as Steam addressing this, I do think this was about as good as you could do with the situation. And I'm not going to drive that in any further than you guys already have. But as far as how customer reviews can be done well, something that we did back on the Player 3 podcast that I really liked was Luke forced us to get rid of the numerical score when we reviewed games. We don't really do reviews on this show, but we did a lot back then. And we stopped doing the number thing just because it winds up being unhelpful. It encourages people to just look at the number and not even look at the feedback. And so we would review games and just like, here's what we liked, here's what we didn't like, and sometimes we do review in a word. That was pretty fun. But but I'd like to see more of that. I think I would like to see more of that. It's hard to imagine a world where we don't assign a numerical rating to everything, but I think we would all benefit from people being forced to put their thoughts into words rather than simplifying them into a number on a scale.
So we do at my company, we model our meetings around a structure called the L10. And it's just a way of like organizing your agenda. But the final thing is you have to rate your meeting, and on a scale from 1 to 10, and it's the most bullshit thing in the universe. Because it's like if you give anything under an 8, you have to explain why, and it'll be put it as an issue. And I'm like, but it's the same exact thing we do with video games, right? Like we see a game gets a 7.5 and we're like, oh man, that game must have been shit. And it's like a 75 is passing. Like a 75 is a good score. But like the more and more we have numeric values on our reviews, like the shorter, the smaller that window becomes for what's an acceptable score for your game. And like, if your game doesn't get an 8 or above, you better explain yourself, because that's a terrible score you've just given us.
Yeah. Well, a score ends any conversation. It's no longer what are the qualities of this game that are good and what could be worked on. It's this is 7.5, this is 6.5. We all have some understanding of what that is, and it's not altogether defined by the actual value of that game, and those scales are always subjective anyway. One person's 7.5 might be another person's 8.5 or another person's 6.5.
Yeah, plus we all give 8 and above during those meetings just because we don't want to have to talk anymore. We're ready
exactly,
yeah.
Well, do you guys have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have one other thing I wanted to bring up. So I'm reading a book right now. It's called Hacking Growth. It's about just like how to yeah. It's all about how to like A/B test your products and figure out how you can propel more and more people to like sign up or buy your product. But they tell the story of a company who realized that in the App Store, you can see like 2 or 3 reviews when you like on the App Store screen, and they realized that like when those 3 were positive and thorough, they had more and more people download their app on those days versus a day where maybe like a 2-star is among those 3. And so they really like push their users to leave more 5-star reviews. And I like your idea, Larry, of it's less about the number score that they give and more about the thoughtfulness of the responses, because I'm one of those people like, hey, if somebody leaves a 3-star review but they write a big long paragraph about, hey, here's all the things that are great, I'm docking off because of this and this, and they're not necessarily use cases in which I would care. Like if somebody were to write a 3-star review about Halo and talk about Warzone as why they're taking stars off, I'm like, well, I don't give I don't care about that because I don't want to play Warzone. So like giving more credence to the thought that's in it, and displaying that, I think would encourage me more to read it and put more stock into it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to end this by saying, as I've said many times with varying degrees of legitimacy, probably, please pour less energy into hating things, everybody.
Yeah. All right, Cody, What you got for us?
Got a story over from Kotaku. Good old boy Jason Schreier.
I've heard of him.
I think we've probably heard of him. It's a name that's been floated around a little bit.
Got his book right here.
Oh yeah, hey, it's on my list. But yeah, this article, I feel like these stories specifically about Ubisoft come out every year. But there was a nice little tease in Division 2 on perhaps what the next Assassin's Creed has to offer people in terms of a setting. This was originally just a rumor that was floating around. There was I think it's the Potomac Event Center location in the game, has a bunch of posters it just says Valhalla, and there's like a Viking looking person, and the person is holding what looks like an apple of Eden from Assassin's Creed. I think most people know what that is. If they don't, it's this legendary item that can kind of control the minds of people. It's kind of the central fixture in the lore of Assassin's Creed. Well, an eagle-eyed sleuther, internet sleuther, found this and kind of took a bunch of photos of it and posted on Twitter. And Jason Schreier obviously saw it and essentially confirmed that this poster is confirmation of something he's heard, which is that the next Assassin's Creed will be taking place in the days of Viking past, which your mileage may vary on Assassin's Creed and your mileage may vary on Vikings. So we're not really going to talk about that because I'm less concerned about talking about the setting of the next Assassin's Creed because I think we've all kind of expressed our varying levels of interest and passion for that series before.
And
but I do want to.
You could literally throw out any setting for an Assassin's Creed, and I'd be like, number 1, I can see it, and number 2, I'm kind of interested. And number 3, I'm interested, but I'm not going to play.
Yeah, and I'm probably somewhere more towards the interested. Not that I will say that I didn't really think Greece was a great setting, but that's just because I've seen that so many times in games. But I like Viking stuff is cool. Like it seems to be very in vogue too with Hellblade and God of War. But I do want to talk about kind of the method that Ubisoft has chosen and continues to choose in terms of teasing its next games. I believe it was in Watch Dogs 2 they teased a game that was sort of in progress called Pioneer that has since been canceled. That is no longer a project that Ubisoft is working on. And they've also teased that the next Watch Dogs will take place in London, which Schreier also confirmed because he has eyes and ears everywhere.
He's the Varys of the video game industry.
He is certainly the Varys of the video game industry.
That's a Game of Thrones reference, Larry.
Oh, Larry doesn't watch.
I understood that. I didn't understand that.
He's a spider. He's a big bald spider.
Ooh, my least favorite thing.
But so yeah, I do want to talk about kind of this idea of the tease that Ubisoft has kind of continued to use as a strategy. For you guys, do you think these kinds of teases are effective? And I mean effective in the terms of kind of getting gamers excited or getting the internet excited, even if the gamer is not excited per se. Do you think this is an effective strategy?
I feel like it's effective. It caught my attention, and it sticks in my mind in a way where, no matter how they had announced that the next Assassin's Creed has Vikings in it, I would have remembered that. But this stands out against the backdrop of lots of people announcing lots of things to me. And I think it's cool because it hits me with some nostalgia for the days when there were all these hidden things in games and all these rumors of things that were hidden, and a lot of it was like urban legend type stuff that you couldn't verify in the everyone's always connected days. And I think it's cool because it also, it's not a huge draw, but it is a draw to people to play more Ubisoft games and to be looking around and keeping their eyes open and paying even more attention and getting even more immersed in these worlds. So I think it is an effective tease.
It's certainly a reason to believe that there's probably more in the Division. Like if they've hidden this what else are they hiding? It's kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, people love I can't remember what we were talking about a couple weeks ago when I think I said this exact same sentence, but people love the feeling of like they have stumbled upon something that was meant to never be found, you know, which is what this has the feeling of. It's the same thing as like data mining a tease site for more information about, you know, whatever announcement's about to come. Like, I would argue that an announcement like this gets more traction than a teaser of a teaser, which was the kind of in vogue way of announcing games, even as far as a couple years ago. Like well, even today, Borderlands 3 had an announcement of an announcement of an announcement. So,
Yeah.
but it was done in much the same way of like, you know, people stumbling upon things, and the same thing with like Apex Legends, and that's what it was with Apex Legends and Octane. Like, people felt like they kind of stumbled upon it, and it gets the community involved. It gets everybody feeling like they're a part of it, and I'd much rather this than many other ways that companies have tried things. Overwatch
Yeah, it's a little
is
bit...
also really good at that sort of stuff too.
Yeah, Blizzard is really good with this. It's just I think over, like, I'm gonna echo some of the sentences you guys said, but it's very playful. And it's playful from like a massive corporation, which is something people like to see. It's something they can attach like another tether onto for a massive brand. And Ubisoft's kind of shifted the narrative on this a little bit, which I think is awesome. I'm gonna switch up the order of these questions.
Unacceptable.
And I might just skip that second question overall because I think it's not really relevant. But and I think part of this conversation, we would be remiss if we did not mention the fact that Ubisoft has been good at these teases, but they've also been good at something else. And that thing is getting Assassin's Creed games leaked very, very early. It happens. I feel like it's an annual thing.
Yeah.
You can basically follow it on a calendar and see when it's going to happen. And so Assassin's Creed, this one, I think they're taking 2019 off and it's launching in 2020, which is a good decision on a number of levels. But it's cool that they did sort of, like, in lieu of a leak happening however far out, they kind of seeded it themselves and allowed people to find it and kind of gamify it in a way. My question is for this, Ubisoft, and I think a lot of developers that are prone to leaking content, there's a you could view this kind of tease as an attempt to get out ahead of leaks. On the side of a corporation, do you think that's effective? Because we've talked about how this might be effective in terms of interacting with your players and for players themselves, but do you think it's good for Ubisoft to kind of tease this stuff?
I think it is. You know, on the one hand, Assassin's Creed is like just so established that I don't think the leaks have ever been like damaging to them.
No.
But at the same time, they very often lose the opportunity to control the narrative and to make the announcement the level of excitement that they would like to. And so anything to get ahead of your game accidentally being listed on a storefront or something like that, I think is a good way to get out in front of it.
Yeah, well, I'm also trying to figure out, because I feel like from this article, this wasn't, and maybe it wasn't in the article, maybe it was a tweet that Jason Schreier had sent out, but this didn't feel like he saw this story and then reached out to Ubisoft to get confirmation. Like, he knew already, right?
He heard it through the grapevine.
Yeah, like, so it doesn't stop the leaks, but like, and if you've listened to anything that Jason Schreier does, like if you listen to Kotaku Split Screen, he talks about it a lot of like, you kind of have to walk this line about what you know and what you reveal, because sometimes it's just not worth it, especially when it comes to things like this, where at the end of the day, they're going to announce it the way they want to announce it, and you may get a few more clicks if you leak it first. So it doesn't sound like this really even curbs like Kotaku isn't much in the realm of spoiling announcements anymore. Like that was a thing that they used to do, but even back to like, you think about Fallout 76, Jason Schreier was like, the coverage we're having for that isn't to ruin what Bethesda's hoping to reveal. It's to get out ahead of some of the misinformation that people have about what they think this game is. And
yeah, it's to clarify.
And so, I mean, I think this is a playful way for Ubisoft to like kind of lean into their own their own meme about who they are.
Yeah.
But I don't think this does anything to stymie that pursuit of inside information from people that aren't Kotaku, who will publish, it's the next Viking game or whatever. But yeah, I think it's just a cheeky way to play up who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll see like leaked concept art and leaked packaging for this game next year. But I do think it's an interesting way to kind of, I guess play into the meme is probably the best way to put it. Like, if Ubisoft is anything, and if they've made clear of their own anything about themselves, is they're aware of the perception of Ubisoft, and they've played into that much more successfully over the past few years. I think leaks are always going to be a thing. Like, it doesn't really matter how meta you are about it or how ahead of it you get. People will always be looking for this kind of stuff. But I do think it's a great way to kind of, I think what you said, Larry, is super important. Like, take control of the message and actually be able to control the narrative around your game somewhat. And ultimately, a leak isn't gonna ruin a Ubisoft game. They're too big to fail. But I do think leaks can kind of ruin the way that your game is presented to the public for the first time, and this is a cool and playful way to do that. And I think we talked a lot about over the past few weeks the terrible, like, dumb things that corporations and developers and publishers have done. And I think it's cool to kind of spotlight. It's a small thing, but it's a playful thing, and it's a great way to interact with your community.
Another benefit that I see to this is we often talk about the problem that has been recurring over the last probably 5, maybe 10 years of announcing a game way out ahead of time, and you get all this stuff on the front end, and then like there's all this time to forget about it. And I think this is a really cool way to like go ahead and get it floating in the public perception, but we don't know anything.
Yeah.
I think this is a good way to just begin the trickle of information.
Fuck it. I'm gonna address this last question because I think it'll be fun to just do some corkboard speculating. In Jason Schreier's article, he just kind of floats out the idea that, like, he's not sure whether this, and he's privy to a lot of information, but he's not sure if this was just like, this was Ubisoft sanctioned, or this was like an artist kind of being a little bit cheeky and kind of getting out. I would stray towards the former than the latter, because I think Ubisoft has a pretty tight, I mean, any company as large as Ubisoft kind of has a tight control, but things can also get lost and things can get through the cracks. If you guys were to speculate about how this made it into the Division 2, how do you think it happened? This is just like a dumb question, because I really am, I was at a loss this week in terms of large stuff, but do you think it was Ubisoft kind of taking control of the message, or do you think it was an individual or group of individuals just fucking around?
I think it was probably Ubisoft sanctioned. It's just it screams of how companies are playing around in the marketing space right now, and it's not impossible, but I do think that
it's highly unlikely
artists would have a hesitancy to risk. Like, there'd probably be big consequences if you accidentally leaked the next game, I don't see someone risking that over something so stupid, but people have before, so.
And it's not like they can't, like, if it's a piece of art and a piece of an art item in the game, they can definitely track down and limit that to a certain department, and then from there limit it to a certain individual. So it's not like you're going to go unnoticed and unknown if you did this.
Yeah, I like how you put it with the corkboard idea. Like, like, it's just a conspiracy theory, but yeah, two things. Number one, like, it's not just the artist. You would all, somebody has to place that art into the game as well. Like, and they have to place it in such a way that it's able to be seen. Like,
also, because they placed it over and over, like it was all over this fucking room.
Yeah, so it would be like, yeah, it's just, it would have to be a small army of people at the developer to pull something like that off. And then secondly would be like, how privy do you think some artist at Ubisoft working on The Division is to the others, what the other studios are working on and what's going to be coming? So, and also just like, I've ran by so much shit in The Division 2 that I've not paid 1 ounce of attention to. And I know I'm not the most thorough person when it comes to these games, but I think it requires a even higher level of thoroughness that I think this is more like Ubisoft saying, hey, look in this direction. For like, I'm more willing to lean that way on the conspiracy that they reached out to a big YouTube or a fairly decent sized YouTuber who would have a big enough audience to get the traction, but not a big enough audience to think like, oh, this is a paid sponsorship or whatever, and said like, hey, in this room there's this thing, go find it and make a video about it. I lean more towards that. Yeah. Much like that time that truck of Amiibos was stolen. And I was like, this wasn't actually stolen. Nintendo stole this to raise the prices of these Amiibos.
Yeah. It is The Division, though, so it's always possible there's a secret cabal of Ubisoft employees whose only goal is to leak content.
It's so true.
Solar, the Society of Leaks and Rumors.
There you go.
Is that from something?
No.
Or did you just make that up?
I just made that up.
Oh, damn. He's creative, boys and girls.
Oh, no.
There's a secret society leaking.
Now I take you seriously.
All right. Now let's take our tinfoil hats off and move on to my topic. GameStop last week announced that they suffered a loss of $673 million in the last fiscal quarter of last year. I don't want to so much talk about that. It's just really context for the rest of the conversation. I think it's well known that GameStop has been suffering. The landscape of the gaming industry is completely changing, and we're not quite sure how they're keeping up. But I did want to mention, and did I not link to this article in here? Oh my gosh, let me pull this up real quick. This is from Twinfinite. The GameStop has recently announced that they are navigating into the esports space. Sorry guys, I thought I had this up. I thought I linked it in the show notes.
I just took your word for it.
Nah, I completely made this up. Nah, this is from Cole Tomashot over on Twinfinite. It says GameStop has just announced that esports will play a significant role in the company's strategy going forward. They have even partnered with teams from Complexity Gaming, Infinite Esports, and Envy Gaming to assist with the move. There's also several other esports organizations that they've partnered with that aren't listed here. Chief Marketing Officer Frank Hamlin provided the following statement about the announcement, quote, "We are aiming to become the unofficial Pop Warner League of esports where GameStop provides fun and unique cultural experiences for player development while preparing the next generation of professional gamers. It doesn't get any better for amateurs of all ages looking to learn and compete at the highest level," end quote. This push towards providing opportunities for player development will come in the form of gaming clinics and esports watch parties. Additionally, the company says its partnership with Complexity Gaming will involve opening the GameStop Performance Center this May, and that's in Texas. So, this is a really interesting angle to me because it's an angle that I don't think we considered. We talk a lot about GameStop going boutique, going more towards the memorabilia side of things, selling retro games. Like, we kind of think in that lane. And this is like a parallel shift. They're still in the same track, but it's just a different lane.
Pivot.
Yeah, do you guys think that, and that's a great word for it, do you think that this pivot is one that is going to help them to remain relevant? And we can talk about this from both angles, the angle of professional player development with these clinics, and also from the amateur side of things with the wanting to become the unofficial Pop Warner League of esports.
I think it's a brilliant pivot. I can't think of another move they could have made that would give me much hope for the company, but this is one that I'm pretty optimistic about. This is a space where like nobody is in that space yet. And I think it's a space that has a lot of potential. You know, there are a ton of kids who are gaming, and I think that a big concern that a lot of parents of gamers have is that their kids are spending too much time in front of a screen and not socializing. And this could be a nice little area where parents and children can come together and find some compromise, and the kid can enjoy the hobby, and the parent can know that their child is interacting with other people that aren't just pretending to be children.
Yeah. So I'm sort of two minds on this. One, I do think this is a great idea in theory. I think there are independent and kind of localized versions of this. We've heard about esports camps kind of popping up here and there, but those are obviously not funded to the degree that a camp or a league would be if it was funded by a company like GameStop. I think it's great for kids who are into this world and were born and raised in this world, who might not be interested in sports, or who are also might be interested in sports but want to kind of experiment in this space, take it a little bit more seriously with others who are like-minded. And I think as we see collegiate esports leagues kind of form and become more serious, the only way that organized esports like the Overwatch League and the league that League of Legends has set up, the only way we're going to see esports survive in the long term is if there is a pipeline for talent. And I think this is a step towards creating an on-ramp for a lot of people, a lot of kids, boys and girls, I hope. Mm-hmm. I am a little bit skeptical because esports is obviously all the rage now, and a lot of companies are investing in esports. A lot of companies that may or may not have the experience in esports and experience understanding what it takes to succeed in that space. I don't know how much experience the folks at GameStop have in this space. Taken on its face, they don't, but they might have brought on staff who are. You would assume they bring on staff who are kind of more well versed in this world. Mm-hmm. So I'm always skeptical when a corporation makes a pivot into something like this that they're not known for or not necessarily familiar with. But I would like to be pleasantly surprised, because I think it is a niche of esports and a world in esports that isn't being serviced, and I think could benefit a lot of kids who are interested in playing games on a more serious level.
Yeah, and I think that what makes this interesting to me is you mentioned there's all these companies that are trying to get in on the esport train because it's the hot new item, but they're trying to get in it on the professional level. Like, mm-hmm. Sponsors are trying to connect in these big leagues, and that's really the big space that like the gold rush is in right now. Whereas this feels more like a move to foster a community rather than to take advantage of the community. Obviously they're a corporation and they're going to look to take advantage of it monetarily, or else they wouldn't get into it. But I don't think anyone looks at amateur or like youth sports before like high school sports and thinks like, oh man, this is going to be a huge moneymaker for us. I do think GameStop is looking at the harsh reality of their future, where they've got all of these physical locations and they're about to have nothing to stock half of those shelves with, as far as like physical product. And they're wondering like, what do we do with these long-term lease agreements that we've entered into in all of this physical space that we have? At the end of the day, as much as people love playing online tournaments, there's nothing quite like the thrill of a LAN tournament. And so being able to convert your facilities to be able to play in those is brilliant to me. And I also just think about like pretty much 3/4 of the time spent driving back to Larry's house on Saturday was us reminiscing about playing in organized sports when we were kids. And Larry and I are not particularly gifted athletically. But we carved out a space for ourselves in that world while we were in school, and we learned a lot of really great lessons through it. And I just think, like, and this sounds so like old man of me, but I learned things about communication and teamwork and camaraderie and something being greater than the sum of its parts, like through organized sports. And it taught me a lot of life lessons that I've carried with me now, even though I don't play baseball or football, in my adult life.
I want to interject one thing there, and that is something that gaming has great potential to do, but it's often lacking in gaming that happens in an unstructured way.
Right. And I think, and that was kind of the point I was pivoting towards, of like, I'm 29. Yeah. A 9-year-old nephew who plays Fortnite all the time, loves Fortnite. But when he plays Fortnite, like, he just has a lot of tendencies about him that are not very teamwork focused. Like, he sees, an awesome gun drop, and it's from somebody else's chest that they open, and he's like begging them to give him the big gun because he's 9, and that's like, that's how 9-year-olds think. I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing in gaming culture today is because the gaming culture was allowed to gestate in this kind of like Wild West area where nobody was setting rules and nobody was setting an example. And so we all just became asshole anonymous individuals behind our microphones. And I think investing into youth esports and something that's going to attract a lot of kids who love video games, and being able to put them into a structured environment where you can teach them like how to communicate with your teammates online, how to just act like a decent human being when you're on comms. Like, I think it can have trickle down effects into impacting gaming culture as a whole. Like, I think people look at their football and baseball and basketball days with a lot of fondness and remember those lessons. And it's going to be cool in 10, 15, 20 years to see a generation of kids who look back on their organized esports days with that same fondness, learning those same lessons. And I don't know if GameStop is the right company to do that, but for them to be, they're the biggest company to think of it. I won't say they're the only company, but they're the biggest. They have the most resources available to them to do it. And I hope that we get to see something like that come to fruition in a national way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. And again, I do want to stress, I think that it's good. You stressing that it's good for gaming is awesome, because I think it could be. It's also just great for the longevity of esports in general. To have kids understanding it at a base level early on. They may not continue playing, but they'll at least understand it. And I think with a generation of people who grew up with games and are now having kids who grew up with games, this will be a thing that parents will be all right, like, bringing their kids up in. My dad would 100% never let me do something like this, but I would 100% let my kid do this.
Same.
Yeah.
A hypothetical kid.
And Cody, you already mentioned it, but like, I do think that it does have positive ramifications for esports all the way up to the highest level, to add a little bit more of a pipeline and a structure to that as well. Some of those can be overinflated. I think in traditional sports, especially like the AAU basketball scene is a really big one. The travel baseball scene, like, it can get out of hand. But I think what's cool in this first generation is, like, I think so much of what makes traditional youth sports kind of a toxic place in and of themselves is because there's a bunch of parents who have their experience in it as well. Whereas this is going to be something totally new to them, and they're not going to look at their kid and be like, my kid should be the starting main tank for this local Overwatch League team, blah, 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 because they played main tank when they were a kid or whatever. Like, you don't get that culture in it. So, like, I don't know. And I'd love to coach. I coached youth baseball for a couple years, and I'd love to coach like a youth Overwatch team. I think that would just be a ton of fun. I'm excited about the potential of this, and GameStop better not let me down, but they never have before.
If they fuck it up, someone else will do it. It's only a matter of time.
True. All right, guys. I think that's really all I've got for that topic. Oh shit, guys.
It's a lot of future talk, man.
What did you do?
Nah, I just messed up. I can't continue to kick your ass this week. I pulled a game for this week, and I have the two truths. I do not have the lie written down in here.
Oh.
So I have failed you. So
you can come up with it on the spot right now.
Oh gosh, I wish. I wish you guys knew how long it took me to come up with the lies that I come up with.
He's usually 3 weeks ahead working on the lie.
But I'll be honest, I was watching, I'll take this time to say this. I was watching episodes of the Player 3 podcast, old episodes of the Player 3 podcast after I got off work today because my wife had a meeting that she had to attend. And I was just getting like sad and nostalgic about it because Mondays were the days that we recorded those podcasts. Like everybody would come over to my house and we'd record it and then we'd go out to eat. And I was just like, those were the days, man. Maybe one day we'll all quit our jobs and sell our families off and be able to do it again.
Hopefully. That's the dream, right?
That's right. So... Well, guys, I'm sorry I disappointed you. Would it help if I gave you each a point to make up for my failure?
No.
Yes.
It had to be unanimous, and so Larry said no. We're going to go with no. All right, let's get out of here. Larry, who are you? Where can people find you? What will you be tweeting or not tweeting about this week?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at Lair Hunts Zombies, and I don't know. I keep getting random urges to tweet, but we're only a couple weeks out from the end of my absence from Twitter, so I'm coming back soon.
Nice.
Keep it all stored up inside and then let it out in one giant.
I've been furiously drafting tweets for months.
Yeah.
All right, Codsworth.
I'm Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. I'm going to try to get back into Sekiro this week, so maybe I'll be tweeting about that.
All right.
I hope to be able to tweet something triumphant at the end of this week.
Oh, the end of this week. You're not very far into it. That's ambitious.
No, not like triumphant as in beating the game.
Oh,
Triumphant
okay.
as in beating this boss I've been stuck on for days.
All right, my name is Luke. You can find me on Twitter at Hoagie_OW. I have some things in the works that I may be pushing some info about this week. Little tease. I'm waiting to hear back on some emails that I've sent out. So just be on the lookout for that. But yeah, other than that, this has been PvA Radio. We get together every week, and each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of that week. And then we have an in-depth discussion about it. It's like collaborative audio feature article, your CAFA. And Cody, what do we ask people to do with that?
Tattoo it on your big toe on your right foot.
Oh,
Specific.
very specific. That sounds painful.
It probably is.
Like the top or the bottom?
Both.
Oh, okay. We're live over here on twitch.tv/PVA Radio every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. You can catch us. If you don't catch us live, you can find us on podcast services everywhere, also on youtube.com/PVA Radio. Until next week, though, guys, we're going to get out of here. We'll be doing some live stuff over here on the Twitch channel, so make sure you follow. But till then, we love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity is